Hi guys, today we are going to start new series. What if Deku was like Iron Man? So let's bring.
Chapter 1. Skimming through the shelves packed with hundreds, if not more, colorful books on them should lift Izuku's spirits. Especially looking through the hero comic part, but it didn't. At all. If anything, it added more salt to the rhetorical wound. Quirkless. He was quirkless. Because of something, he didn't know what it was. The doctor explained it to his mom, but he used words that Izuku couldn't understand at his age. Besides, he was more focused on the crushing feeling he felt. His ambition, his dream, taken away from him. All because he didn't have what most of the society possessed. Without a quirk, he couldn't be a hero. Kachan said it, the doctor said it, his mom said it, not directly, but he figured it out when she hugged him tightly and apologized continuously while shedding tears. Izuku shook his head, trying to get rid of all those thoughts. His mom came with him to this shop, so he could get some new hero comics and cheer him up. While he still had trouble reading and didn't understand a bigger part of the words used in them without explanation, he still enjoyed them, the colors, the action, heroes saving people and triumphing over villains. Izuku truly found himself wrapped in the world of comics. He eyed the books on the shelves. Most of them had All Might on their cover. Izuku wasn't surprised by that. All Might was #1 hero in Japan and America after all. It was only natural for people wanting to see his adventures, even if most of them were fictional. Everyone enjoyed them anyway. Under normal circumstances Izuku would grab one of them to his already large collection without a second thought, but this weren't normal circumstances. All Might represented everything that Izuku couldn't ever hope to archive. All Might was a true hero with a charming smile and a powerful quirk. And Izuku couldn't even get a chance to try to become one. With a silent sigh, he hung his head low and left the shelf. He wandered for some time looking at the floor, before his eyes rose up. Izuku tilted his head to the side. He was still in the hero part of the comic section, but this comics were different. Lines were more sharp to them, colors more toned, but still somehow flashy. But the most important thing was that, Izuku didn't recognize any of the heroes here, which for a dedicated hero fan was simply groundbreaking. He deduced that maybe some older heroes, like more than 20 years before him. There was a guy with a hammer, red cape and some kind of armor with lighting around him. Then a huge, green human, whose muscles were rivaling All Might's, that was smashing through a wall. Next was a man in blue costume with a shield that had a fierce expression and explosions in the background, while jumping through the air. And then, some kind of flying robot, but the robot looked like a person. None of those rung any bells in Izuku's head, and as a dedicated hero fan he couldn't allow that kind of disgrace to shine upon him. Intrigued and determined, he took one of those with the humanoid robot. First thing he noticed was that the comics was rather dusty and the paper felt kind of old. Ignoring it for now, he started looking at the pages. Imagine his shock when it turned out it wasn't robot, it was a suit of some kind, that the main character made for himself to battle crime. Before Izuku knew it had read 4 of those comics. Izuku, honey, what are you looking at? His mom voice brought him up from his lecture. Izuku looked from the page he was reading it, to his mother who crouched next to him eyeing comics sprawled around the floor. I've found this, he said, showing her the cover. It's Iron Man. He felt his tongue twist at that and judging from his mom's small laugh, he most likely messed it up. English words were hard to say. I believe it says, Iron Man, Izuku. She said the name slowly to show him the proper pronunciation. It probably means man made out of iron. Oh, that makes sense, he said looking at the cover. Man made of iron, Iron Man, the man who fought the crime in metal suit. Most likely he had some kind of strength type quirk to be able to move around. But then again he could fly, shoot some laser beams from his chest and palms, and then there were rockets and other weapons in his suit. Multiple quirks. That sounded like a possible solution, but wow kid, you've got some brain there, came the voice with a weird accent behind him. Izuku jumped slightly and blushed. He was mumbling. Again, getting over his embarrassment, he looked over his shoulder to find a rather old man with glasses and slicked back gray hair smiling at him. He wasn't Japanese, maybe American. He had a shirt with the store logo on it, so most likely an employee. The man looked at Izuku and then at comics laying on the floor. Nice taste kid, no one really reads those anymore. Izuku raised his eyebrows at that. Why, this are good, I really enjoyed them. The man smiled even more, chuckling slightly. Those are pre-Quirks comics kid. They're like over 200 years old. The employee explained, making Izuku gasp. Only guys working here read them, well, some of them, myself included. He pointed at the comic Izuku was holding. I like that series in particular, do you want me to tell you more about it? The man asked and Izuku found himself nodding his head rather vigorously, making the man chuckle again. It's about a smart inventor, millionaire who had a terrible accident happen to him and decided to save people by using a super tech suit of his making. Smart. He must be super smart to build that thing. Most likely he has some kind of intelligence quirk. No wait, it's a pre-quirk comic, so maybe some kind of power that makes him really, really smart. Izuku mumbled under his nose, stroking his chin, and judging the possibilities of such a hero to exist in his era. Only to be interrupted by the man laughing loudly. You really have a brilliant mind and colorful imagination, don't you, kid? He said, making Izuku blush yet again and his mom giggle. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's not that. Man said, looking into Izuku's eyes. What? Izuku couldn't help but ask. If the man with the suit didn't have multiple quirks or some kind of brain power, then what? He's just really smart. He's got a big brain filled with knowledge and ideas. That's it, kid. No quirks, no brain enchanting abilities. It's just him. Man explained to Izuku softly. Izuku blinked at that, his brain coming to an abrupt stop. He had it spelled to him, but he he needed to have a confirmation. For his own sake. So, he's quirkless? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Man blinked at that. Well, using our age terminology. Yes, he's quirkless. Izuku moved his eyes from the man to the cover of the comic, that showed the main hero in his suit, helmet under his armpit, smiling gently and looking ahead. Looking at Izuku, something warm filled his chest. And he knew what it was. That was the same feeling he had every time, when he heard or saw All Might. The feeling that told him that everything was going to be okay now. That he is here. That his hero is here, watching over him. Keeping him safe. Giving him hope. Izuku sniffed and felt his eyes water, so he ran his hand over them. Hey mom, Izuku said, his voice being nothing but a soft whisper, but he knew he had his mother attention. Can we get this once? Of course, sweetie. His mom answered, hugging him lightly and kissing the top of his head. And do we have a book that explains words at home? A dictionary? Yes, we do. Why? She asked, curious of her baby boy motives. I want to read and understand the words in them. Izuku said, while getting up. There was the ghost of a smile gracing his lips. If you want to read them, better start at the beginning. The man said, while eyeing Izuku, giving him warm smile. I can fetch you those, kid, they must be somewhere at the back. Yes, I would like that, mister. Izuku said, tilting his head. Stanley kid, gimme a few moments. Izuku simply nodded and watched the man go and look for the comics. He may not have a quirk. His dream may be laying in the mud right now. But his spirit is not broken. And Izuku would be damned if he gives up without a fight. If he can't have a power of his own, then he will simply develop it. Building it from the ground up. Chapter 2. Izuku kept his gaze glued to the page he was reading, completely ignoring the commotion in his classroom. Once again he wished his classmates would be more considerate, and keep all the noise an octave or two lower. Not that they're bugging him in any way, Izuku just didn't want to go deaf so early in his life. He lived in his own little world, and they lived in theirs. Of course he wasn't a complete douche, that role belonged to the very angry Pomeranian, with his ever-present scowl, a few sits in front of him. Maybe he was born this way. He tried listen to what was happening around him, but only picked up on the important things. Like how, their homeroom teacher came with a stack of papers, started saying something about choosing their life paths, only to throw all those, rather nicely sorted for him, papers in the air, which in turn made his classmates cheer and start using their quirks. Didn't they know that was illegal? Then he heard someone ranting about his destined life path to greatness, while something popped and filled the room with a caramel scent. Only for his teacher to say something that filled the room with eerie silence, before laughter bursted from the class. Somewhere along that mildly annoying sound, Izuku heard his surname but chose to ignore it. The part he was reading now seemed rather complicated, he knew he would have to return later to it and make some notes at home. He really didn't want to mess up and make a miscalculation during the planning phase. But the very loud and obnoxious scream that sounded oddly like deku and non-stop popping cut his lecture short. Holding back a sigh that threatened to escape his lips, Izuku lazily rose his eyes from the pages just in time to see Bakugo ready to swing his arm at his desk, animalistic scowl and small red eyes directed at him. Izuku in a flash pieced together what was the most likely scenario that led to this unfortunate development. Weighing his options and taking into account that principal had all desks replaced last week, he chose to act. Support course, Izuku said in the most uninterested tone he could muster, which wasn't that hard, but it worked. Bakugo stopped mid-swing, his explosions vanishing completely after a second, but the scowl and red gaze piercing right through Izuku remained. He was finally getting to some interesting parts, but he knew that leaving his eyes out of the blonde form would lead to taking combusted sweat right into his face. Excuse him, he liked his face as it was. So he kept looking, not in the eyes, he didn't want Bakugo to think he's challenging him or something, God forbid. He glued his eyes to his chin, most likely the safest place to look. What did you say, you damn nerd? Bakugo nothing but growled at him. UA's support course. That's where I'm going, Izuku said short and simple, he really wanted to go back to reading. Bakugo huffed, shoving his hands into his pockets and somehow relaxed, but the scowl remained. Was it permanent by now? Good. Keep it that way, Deku, remember that it was me who aced the UA mock test. Go with the other extras, at least they could use your shitty nerd brain for something useful. Bakugo said with his gruff voice sprinkled with satisfaction of putting the shitty nerd where he belonged. Izuku just nodded to him and watched him go. He wanted to correct his unpleasant ex-best friend, #1 bully. Bakugo didn't ace the mock test. He did fairly well, getting 95%, which was fairly high, but he was still 5% shy from Izuku. Thank God that his teacher ignored his score. Izuku knew that saying that to Firecracker's face would be equal to uncomfortable heat and shockwave right into his nose and some other roughing. Izuku wisely chose life. Midoriya, came his teacher's sleepy voice. What are you reading? Again, Izuku didn't even spare a glance to the man, his eyes were occupied with picking up where he stopped reading. He realized that his teacher was trying to get him into trouble for what seemed like the 1000th time by now. The man couldn't handle that there was someone much smarter than him. Izuku only corrected him once, 2 years ago. Electrodynamics and energy conversion, college-level stuff. Izuku answered as politely and humble as he could. Why people couldn't just leave him alone with his books? Maybe he really should take that early exam. He would have so much more time to read, gain money from his work or train some more martial arts. Not to mention the peace and quiet he would acquire, his social life was non-existent anyway. Izuku focused on his reading, completely shutting down the world around him. Now that the unfortunate commotion was out of the way, he could just read and take mental notes. If he remembered well enough, which he did, this was his last period. Which meant he was free in about 30 minutes give or take. Good, he had training today. Leaving the school grounds, Izuku walked at a leisurely pace toward the gym. He had some time to kill, so he decided that taking a detour and going next to the river bank, away from the main road, would do him some good. He wanted some quiet time, and read some more. The devious bell had rung right in the middle of an important explanation. Seeing the underbridge passage, he decided not to cross it and sit on the grass close to it. His mom said that he could use some sun, vitamins and stuff, and that he was too white. Mom once joked that he was whiter than a paper sheet. Excuse him, he wasn't. He compared it, and was a few shades away from it. Izuku was just about to open his backpack when he heard some weird noise from the passage. Like jelly dessert makes when you blow air into it using a straw, intrigued he rose up and looked into it. There he saw some kind of grayish-green sludge with creepy eyes and mouth. The jelly monster ranted about how he was being chased by some giant, blonde buffoon and needed to hide. Izuku wisely decided that he didn't want to deal with it and stood next to the entrance, hiding next to the wall. A few moments later he heard a notorious and slightly obtrusive voice, a call of the super move like the one in games, and felt the extreme wind pressure rushing past him. Izuku's mind registered that he knew that voice. He knew it very well. Taking a peek, he saw an abnormally tall, buff man with blonde hair that had 2 bangs sticking up like a V, wearing green cargo pants and a plain, white t-shirt, who held a grocery bag. Yup, suspicions confirmed. It was All Might, he's number 3 favorite hero. In front of him, on the walkway and walls, was green goo. Piecing together what happened, Izuku couldn't help himself but say, wow. All Might heard him and turned to him slightly surprised. The two stared at each other for a few seconds and then. Do not worry, citizen, the danger have passed. Why, Because I'm here, All Might all but shouted, ending it with his iconic laugh. I wasn't worried, Izuku said nonchalantly while shrugging a bit. And could you keep your voice down, please? I've just left the school and there is plenty of obnoxious loudness there, he said bluntly. He didn't want to have a headache or damaged hearing. Oh, of course, sorry, All Might answered him somehow bashfully with clear embarrassment. Do you need a hand with picking it up? Izuku asked, pointing to the whole passage behind Giant's back. We could use those bottles of yours. All Might blinked at him, taking some time to process his words. After most likely rebooting his brain, he answered, no need, young man, I've got it covered, waving his hand in front of him. Nah, I've got time and I'm always happy to help, Izuku said, a small smile on his lips. All Might looked like he wanted to deny him yet again, but Izuku already made his way past him and started gathering gross to touch sludge into a more manageable pile. The two worked silently, slowly squeezing vile slime into plastic containers. Getting work almost done and securing the most important parts, eyes and mouth, Izuku thought that he needed to tell All Might something. You know, I'm quirkless, he started, dropping the rhetorical bomb at the hero, making him stop and look at Izuku with surprise evident on his face. All my life I was laughingstock for everyone around me. Especially considering that I want to become hero in the future. Thanks to you, I may add. He flushed a small smile at All Might, but didn't stop his hands from working. I was, and still am, bullied for a genetic defect. The day I was told by the doctor that I don't have any kind of power like everyone around me was crushing. He stopped for a second, getting lost in his memories and feelings. But it didn't stop me. I still want to become hero. Still want to help people. And no matter what everyone says, I'll carry on. Maybe I won't be the number one like you, but it matters not to me. It's all for the public and media anyway. I aim to become a symbol, just like you. Although symbol of peace may be out of my reach. I don't think I'll ever have power to be that. Maybe a symbol of hope or something like that. Izuku finished, both his monologue and gathering the pile of disgusting goo. He felt somehow lighter, getting it all out of his chest to the man who inspired him to choose his life path. Izuku rose up, straightening his back and sending All Might a big grin while handing him a bottle. All Might took a while to wrap his head around his declaration. His face morphing from surprise to slight shock and finally to admiration. Recognition. Izuku wasn't sure, but the giant smile and full belly, friendly laugh made him feel at ease. Young man, those words you've just said moved me deeply. I admire your determination and your dream. I'm going to be honest with you. The moment you said you're quirkless and still desire to be a hero, I wanted to stop you there. But I know my words would just dump down your spirit, nothing else. Let me warn you though, the path to heroics isn't padded with roses, and hero life is a dangerous one, trust me on that. His voice turned very serious at the end. No doubt some kind of personal experience. But seeing the look in your eyes and hearing the drive in your voice. Allow me to say those words to you. You, young man, can become a hero. A splendid one at that, no doubt. So carry on with your dreams and change them into reality. All Might finished while giving him a thumbs up. Izuku couldn't help but smile widely at that. He felt his eyes itch a bit, most likely due to the tears that were threatening to fall from them. Stupid Midoriya waterworks. Quickly he rubbed them against his sleeve and looked at the hero. Thanks. That means a lot to me. He eyed the bottles that were shoved into All Might's side pockets. Considering that All Might's most used way of transport was literally jumping into the sky, those two containers were sure to fall out. Give me a moment, All Might. I have a duct tape in my backpack. We can secure the bottles with it. Better be safe than sorry, he said, already looking for said item. Good thinking, young man. And while we're at it, would you like an autograph? Izuku blinked at the question. Did he want one? Yes, very. As a dedicated hero fan he always wanted to have one. And having All Might's, no doubt he would frame it in his room. Did he have something to write it on? Not really. In his backpack were only book he was reading at school, some basic supplies, and his inventions to build in the future volume 13 feet notebook. While taping bottles secure, he was thinking about using the notebook. He would consider it as some kind of blessing. Yeah, that would be good. After getting All Might's signature, telling him his name and watching the hero take off into the vast sky, Izuku turned around and picked up his pace from leisure walk to march, barely containing his excitement. He didn't want to be late for his training. Izuku fished out a simple black earpiece and put it on. Alan, please tell me that we have that recorded, he asked, while grinning from ear to ear. His cheeks hurt, but he didn't mind. Of course, sir, answered him a computer voice in the earpiece. I've already cut it and saved under a very appropriate name. Oh my god, it is All Might and I'm trying very hard to not fanboygasm right into his face. Alan, Izuku started, his smile now strained. I really hate you sometimes, you know. I'm doing my very best, sir. Chapter 3. Nezu kept glancing around the observation room. Teachers slowly filled it, sitting comfortably in padded armchairs. Midnight and Mike were chatting rather loudly as usual. Snipe, Vlad King and Cementos engaged in small talk, 13 and Ectoplasm cutting in from time to time. All Might in his small, withered form observed the screens, watching candidates preparing to practical part of the hero course exam. He could bet his money that Yagi was already looking for potential successor. Eraserhead stood in the corner, his back against the wall and eyes closed, he seemed to doze off. Well, when time comes Nezu knew that Aizawa would be very meticulous in watching kids struggle, and lastly. Majima-san, did something happen? Nezu couldn't help but ask. Ever since the support course exam last week Power Loader was, Nezu had hard time placing his paw on it. Majima was going from being super excited and a bit giddy, to complete desperation and downwards Aizawa's dead inside state. He even caught him stealing some of Vlad's secret vodka stash. Power Loader turned toward Nezu and folded his arms on his bare chest. It's just that I'm going to have 2 very unique students. He ended with heavy sigh. Going to? We still haven't gone through support candidates' scores. Nezu inched closer, putting his head on his paws, small smirk dancing on his lips. Power Loader barked a laugh and shook his head. Oh, trust me on this, boss, those 2 already are in our school. Looking at their scores is just a formality. Nezu couldn't help but grin at that. So where does your problem lie? One of them is definitely going to be a death of me. Majima answered in so familiar Aizawa deadpan tone. And the other one, he's a genius. I had to ask him during the interview to explain some things to me, because last time I heard them was in college. Power Loader chuckled a bit. You're going to like him. Nezu grinned widely at that. Excitement bubbling in his chest. Maybe he's going to pay a visit or 2 in support studio. But I'm fighting with my thoughts. Majima admitted, scratching his chin. Nezu just nodded his head to continue. I'm sure that if those 2 click together they'll push each other into greater highs. He paused for a moment, shivering slightly. But I also fear that they're gonna do something that'll probably result in our early demise. Nezu laughed at that. Now he was sure that he's going to drop into studio to watch those 2. I can't wait and see what their inventions are. Nezu admitted and turned back to screen. It was almost time to start. Power Loader chuckled silently. Oh, you're about to see one in the exam. He said, gaining Nezu's attention again, this time with puzzled expression. Let's just say that I've taken a bit of liberty and added something that Genius Boy made. Ha paused for a second. No spoilers though, he ended, gluing his gaze to the screens. Nezu fidgeted in his seat, excitement overflowing. Now he was looking at every monitor, searching for clues, wondering what the oh-so-talented future student did. He had to scold himself more than a dozen times. That riddle Power Loader left him with was keeping his attention away from hero hopefuls. It was subtle at first, so subtle, that he was sure he missed it at the beginning, but then it started becoming more and more clear. He heard murmurs beginning to rise in the room, other teachers picking it up. Questions flowing from one to the other. Is it me or do those bots seem smarter? Finally Snipe asked what was in everyone's heads. Nezu heard cackling and looked at Majima to see his shoulders rising with every sound, huge Aizawa-like grin on his face. Majima-san, would you be so kind and enlighten us? Power Loader took few deep breaths and turned toward his fellow co-workers. What you're witnessing, my dear friends, is the work of a support student candidate. He savored their surprised reactions, even the ever-so-stoic Aizawa raised his eyebrow. In his mind he started thanking Genius Boy, his work was going to make his day. Long story short, Kid not only changed the whole bot operating system. He gave them a new one. He gestured to the screen to show how one pointer dodged a laser beam with movement too complicated and refined for old robots. Not only that, he also added a learning program to it. Bots now observe, analyze and develop counter strategies, and to spice things up, they share information between themselves. Lastly, if a bot judges that his opponent is too much for it, it calls for help. To sum it up, our bots think just like a normal human being. To say that teachers were shocked would be an understatement. Almost every jaw hung open. Aizawa's eyebrows seemed to vanish in his hairline, which was enough for Majima as he allowed his lips stretch into the biggest shit-eating grin he ever had in his life. He was sending this kid a basket. You're saying that a 14-year-old did that in 3 years? Came the question from Mike, his voice pure bewilderment. Oh no, Power Loader laughed, getting comfy in his seat. He did it in 2 and in the other hour he vastly improved the bot's power cores. At the interview he said to me, if I had 1 hour more, I'd improve their AI even more, or something like that. The choking noises from some of his friends were music to his ears. Then came the 0-pointer and they watched as students turned into massive headless chickens. All of them running away as far as possible, not caring about others, their own safety first and foremost. Displeased sounds made around the room. Suddenly screens switched to show a girl with brown hair stuck under a huge slab of concrete. She tried to turn around and touch it, but to no avail. The biggest problems. No candidates around her and a giant behemoth rolling towards her. Power Loader, stop that robot. Came the distressed call from All Might. No need. Majima answered nonchalant, checking his nail protectors. What? This girl is going to be rolled over. Yagi screamed, standing up, steam rising from his body. She won't. Power Loader pointed to the screen, smirking slightly. Just shut up and watch. They all watched in anticipation as the giant robot came closer and closer to where the girl was lying, and completely ceased its movement. Its head spun around, making it look like lost puppy. Then lowered its arm, swiping the concrete from the girl just to gently pick her up and leave her on the side of the road. Then it casually continued chasing after other kids, making girl stare at it with her jaw hung open. Kid added extra lines for the 0-pointer. If it can't go around students unable to move out of its way, it helps them. Tested it on myself. Majima simply stated, burning the image of his coworker's slack jaws with Nezu insane laughter in the background into his memory. He couldn't wait for that genius kid to come to school. If it lead to more situations of this kind, Power Loader will gladly take any consequences. Izuku breathed in slowly cold air and released steam from his mouth. He was glad that he listened to Mom and took that hideous yellow scarf, it was super freezing today. He ran his hand against frigid stone, shoving accumulated snow on the ground. Hey, Stan, Izuku said in a somewhat somber voice. It was closing on a year now, since his boss, friend and grandfather figure died. Izuku didn't remember last time he cried so much. Not even declaration of his quirklessness was that hard for him to deal with. He owed so much to that man. He alongside his mom shaped him into who he's today. It was Stan who gave Izuku the idea, no matter how insane it may look, to turn comics into reality. It was Stan who sparked Izuku's thirst for knowledge outside of anything hero-related. That's why Stan will forever remain as Izuku's #1, as his symbol. I had the support course exam 2 weeks ago, the answer will come by any day now. He paused, shuffling nervously. I'm almost sure I got in. You should have seen Power Loader face when I showed him some of my ideas. You would find it absolutely hilarious. Izuku chucked, utterly bewilderment in the hero's face still fresh in his mind. I didn't show him the suit. That's a total secret for now. Only, when I'm in the UA I'll share it with him, and ask for help if necessary. Izuku took deep breath and pursed his lips slightly. Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do if they shot down the idea. He admitted with fear, the Iron Man's suit was his only solution. His only chance to ever become a hero. He remembered when Stan joked around that Izuku'd become the live version of Tony Stark. Suit, company, lovely lady at his side and a mass of people asking for his autograph. Izuku didn't deny that he dreamed about it almost every day. But now, being so close to turning those thoughts into reality, he was terrified. He couldn't help but think of millions, what-if, questions. He guessed it was natural for anyone. But he still was scared shitless. Of course, if they said no, Izuku would most likely come up with another idea to become a hero. High-tech suit wasn't his only written-down invention, but it'd not be the same. He'd feel disappointed in himself, like he let the Stan down. Just that thought alone was more devastating to him than any of All Might's punches. Izuku touched gravestone, gently following his fingers across the edge. We shall see what life brings to us, won't we, Stan? He sighed loudly and patted the headstone. I'll swing by another day. Don't go around and cause trouble to others, okay? Izuku left cemetery feeling somehow better. He wasn't fantastic or even good. He was just okay. Still worried and stressed, but throwing it out of him somehow lifted a weight from his shoulders. Of course it wasn't as effective as talking to Stan himself. But it's all he had now and he's not one to complain, much. Arriving at his home he immediately spotted very stylish, carefully polished dress shoes that were ideal for 4-year-old child in size. From the living room came 2 voices, one belonged to his mom and other was definitely male, although it was rather high-pitched. Taking off his outside wear, Izuku slowly made his way forward to greet sudden guest. Mom hasn't told him about a visit. There, in front of his mom sat a small, Izuku wasn't sure here. He knew that humans nowadays shared traits with animal. The police chief in Hosu had dog head for crying out loud, but this guest looked exactly like some kind of oversized rodent, in a super fancy suit with a long scar over his right eye, while drinking tea, and chatted with his mom, who looked like she had the time of her life. The rodent human saw Izuku enter the room, sent him a polite smile and put away his cup. If it isn't young Midoriya, he said standing up and walking toward Izuku. He didn't even reach Izuku's hips, but his presence made Teen feel that this man was to be respected. He extended his paw. I could not contain myself and not pay you a visit, young man. Izuku bent down and shook rodent man paw. His fur was very soft, Izuku duly noted. Thank you, sir, I'm honored, but I'm afraid I don't know who you are. Guest grinned at that. Who am I? Am I a bear, or a mouse, or maybe a dog? The answer is, I'm the director of UA High, he said, while making some sort of dramatic pose. Izuku was dumbfounded. The very man who was responsible for the best hero school in Japan and one of the most known in the world, came to his house to talk to him. Him, a nerdy, antisocial teenager. Sudden sense of dread crept down Izuku's spine. Was he in trouble? Did something happen during hero exam and he was responsible, because of his new system? Oh God, please tell him nobody died. Just the bare thought that his invention could be responsible for taking away someone's life made his heart stop. Was he going to court? Or maybe straight to prison? Was principal here, because he wanted to present them an insanely long list of damage that was dealt to the school? Please tell him that the freaking 0-point behemoth didn't run rampant, because he messed up somewhere in the code. Oh my, Power Loader and your mother weren't joking when they said that you can talk. Principal said, chuckling silently into his paw. Izuku clasped his hand over his mouth and felt his face heat up. Let's sit down and have a small chat. The rodent man turned around and plopped himself back on the armchair. Izuku sat next to his mom, who tried her very best to not laugh at her son's embarrassment. Izuku sent her slightly annoyed and dirty look, turning toward principal and found his mouth drier than the desert. He wanted to ask questions, but no sound came out. He was beyond nervous, partly wishing to go back to cemetery and lay beside Stan. That would be 1,000 times better now that this. Worry not, young Midoriya. I didn't come here because you're in trouble. Quite on the contrary, principal stated, allowing Izuku to let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Normally we send out letters into those who passed holodiscs. But there was no way for me to contain my excitement and wait for such a brilliant mind to come in April. I had to meet you, young man. Principal chuckled into his paw and took a sip from his cup. I must say you've left quite an impression on me and other teachers. He looked straight at Izuku, small friendly smile gracing his lips. I did, of course. Due to your AI we had to lower the acceptance score, because almost all candidates had trouble with taking down villain bots. Allow me to show you something. Principal said, digging into his briefcase, which laid previously beside the armchair. He took out a tablet, tapped a few times and presented it to Izuku. He and his mom watched the scene. Many candidates running away from giant 0-pointer with fearful expressions, leaving behind an injured girl. Izuku felt anger boil in his chest. Those were hero candidates. He heard his mom gasp when Metal Behemoth stopped before Trapped Girl. They fidgeted waiting for what's to come. Both released their breaths when 0-pointer helped girl get out and left her alone. Good, Izuku didn't accidentally screw up. Thanks to your program, this girl's health and many others was saved. Principal said, taking tablet from Izuku. We always had a problem with them and some of the children ended up being injured. The rodent man bowed slightly to Izuku, offering a smile. Izuku himself felt all of his earlier anxiety vanish. He helped someone. His invention helped. He could do it. He really had a shot at being a hero. I must say, I'm greatly impressed in your programming skills, young Midoriya. And Power Loader told us about your wonderful mind. Allow me to congratulate you, Izuku Midoriya, you are accepted into the UA support department as a member of Class 1H. Principal said, while placing the official letter on the table. Izuku's mom hugged him with all her might and he himself felt a happy lone tear down his cheek. He did it. But I can't help myself, but to ask you, young Midoriya. Principal said, gaining the son-mother duo attention. What is your source of skill in question? Power Loader tried to walk me through your lines of code, but found himself unable to explain more than half of it. Izuku opened his mouth to answer that, but stopped himself, before any sound was made. Half grinning, he asked wordlessly his mom to release him, which she did, but not before kissing his head. Izuku took out an earpiece from his pants pocket and presented it to Principal, who in turn looked at it with curious expression and pressed it against his small ears. Alan, say hello to UA's principal. Izuku said proudly, grinning fully. He enjoyed the principal's face shifting from pure surprise to full grin matching his own. Izuku felt that it was a strange beginning of a wonderful friendship. Chapter 4. Izuku woke up to the sound off his beeping alarm. With the sluggish movement of his arm he tried to find his phone, intent in turning off the obnoxious noise. He didn't even remember setting up that particular song. After a few pats around the usual laying place of device, he decided that he was too lazy to bother with it and choose the easier option. Alan, please turn off the alarm, he said, rolling across his bed. After a few seconds the alarm was still beeping. Alan, you there? Izuku raised his head, slowly opening his eyes and looking toward his desk. Yes, unfortunately I am, sir, came the response. Monitor lighted up blinding the now hissing Izuku. I'm just waiting for you to get your lazy ass up, sir. Well, I don't wanna. Izuku answered, falling back on the soft mattress. He stayed up till 3 a.m. to make sure everything was prepared and working properly as planned. He also gathered all of his semi-finished products to take them to UA, intending to use school supplies and finish them all up. So do I understand correctly that you want to be late for your first day in UA, sir? Should I call Principal Nezu and relay that message? Izuku all but jumped off his bed, landing comically on the floor. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, while searching his dresser for his underwear. I've tried to get you to sleep earlier at least 10 times, sir, and when you finally decided to rest for the night, you just said to set up the alarm for you. So if anything it is your fault, sir. Izuku opened his mouth to talk back. I've got it on the tape. Don't bother arguing with me, sir. Izuku just huffed, slightly regretting giving Alan a free will to create its own personality. He shook his head and left to get ready for the day. His first official day in UA high school, talk about exciting. After marking off the bathroom from his morning activities, Izuku slipped into his school uniform and marveled at his reflection. It still felt like a dream for him. Maybe he still was sleeping. He pinched his cheek and felt pain, so, unless he dreamed that feeling, it was real. After breakfast with his mom, grabbing his backpack and sport bag filled with electronics he made his way out. Izuku, wait, came mom voice behind. Turning to her, Izuku saw her small and thin form tearing up a bit with proud smile on her lips. You look cool, sweetie. Have a good day. Thanks mom. Izuku smiled back waving at her. During his train ride to school he felt people looking at him sending him polite smiles. Was that the famous respect toward UA and its students? He was just starting school and everyone around him already were looking up to him, expecting great things. Most likely they thought that he was in hero course. If someone asked Izuku about it, he'd tell the truth. He didn't want fake admiration. He wanted people to recognize him for his deeds and inventions. UA's building was as always, breathtaking for him. It didn't matter that for the last month he was coming here to work on a special project with the principal and Power Loader. It was his school now. Maybe he was still in bed. Another pinch said otherwise. Sir, do you want me to guide you toward your classroom? Alan asked, pulling Izuku out of his musings. No, I'm good. I've already memorized most of the main campus layout. Izuku answered stepping into school grounds. Are you sure? We don't want you to end up in Midnight's arms. Again, do we, sir? Izuku shuddered at the memory of this particular accident. The worst part, he found himself enjoying a bit off her petting. We agreed to never speak of it, Alan. Did we? Came back the cheeky response. How are you feeling though, sir? Izuku blinked at that and scratched his head. When Alan wanted he really was a great friend. If only he finally dropped the, sir, thing. Good, I can't wait for it to start. Izuku admitted smiling slightly. And you, Alan, just like the lines of zeros and ones. Back to being cheeky. Izuku smiled shaking his head. He started wondering about his future classmates, remembering one in particular from the exam. He had to admit, she's talented, where everyone made 1 or 2 things, that girl ended up with 5. But during this she caused several explosions and a mini fire. Her proud laugh and the offhand comment that it was less than what she normally didn't help. Izuku found himself wishing that this pink-haired menace wasn't in his class. Shota slowly sipped coffee from his cat-themed mug in the teacher's lounge. He wasn't sure who made it, but damn him, it was good. Almost enough to show some of his heart and not make his students suffer. Almost. Thinking of students, his mind wandered to a particular one. Power Loader's genius boy. Shota had no doubt that kid was smart. Well, smart wasn't accurate. Nezu showed him the kid's IQ test. That boy really had a brain. Shota himself meet boy once. The mumbling that kid made, while gushing out all information about Eraserhead honestly gave him chills. Then he asked for an autograph and pulled a notebook containing said information and good-looking sketch of him seemingly out of nowhere. Shota didn't really know what to do. In his whole hero career he was never asked for one. In the end he just shrugged it off and fulfilled the kid's wish, gaining a blinding smile. Then Genius Boy gave him one of his inventions, a micro camera that was ideal for underground operations. Best thing about it, no one would be able to see it, because it blended perfectly into Shota's hero costume. But Shota knew a problem child, when he saw one. Call it his 7th sense, because the 6th belonged to finding cute, fluffy cats. That genius boy was sure to bring trouble, especially with that odd, positive vibe he gave off. When he voiced his thoughts to Nezu, the accursed rodent laughed a bit and told him about the kid's plan for the future, or at the very least a part of it. Hearing it, Shota wasn't sure if he was impressed or scared. Probably both. His phone pinged, signaling him it was time to get going and meet his new students, or playthings, as Midnight loved to say. She wasn't entirely wrong. Grabbing his beloved yellow sleeping bag and resetting his facial features, to completely dead inside, he made his way towards 1A. Momo wasn't entirely sure what to think of her classmates. Her whole life she was homeschooled and didn't have much contact with people her age. Her only interactions were limited to balls and tea parties her parents attended. Every girl there were just like her. Prim, soft-spoken, giving of polite smiles, and all of the boys there. Momo had lost her count after the 5th time. She caught them, secretly, ogling at her body. But she was sure of 2 things. The extremely loud blonde with spiky hair and ego bigger than the whole school, and the little perverted kid with purple balls on his head were not on her list for potential friends. Ever. She wanted as little to do with them as possible. Already she caught little pervert stare at her body 4 times. Then came their homeroom teacher, and Momo again found herself unsure what to think. Judging from the dark bags under his eyes, he looked like he was about to drop to the floor on his next step. His state of wardrobe and hair made him similar to hobo living under a bridge. She knew it wasn't good to assume things about people. She was raised better than this, but she couldn't help but think that way this time. Aizawa-sensei gave them their PE uniforms and told them to meet him on the training field beside the school's gym. Good thing she already memorized school layout. After arriving, Aizawa-sensei told them about the quirk apprehension test. Momo found herself intrigued by that and silently mused about it. The teacher most likely wanted to see them in action, to judge their control and fitness. After a short speech her teacher pulled out his phone and started tapping. When 10 seconds passed, Momo couldn't help but think about his rudeness. Answering a text mid-lesson. Unthinkable. Why did UA hired? God damn it. Aizawa said irritated. Why is it not working? Stupid thing. Momo and many of her classmates tilted their heads at the scene. Did that man never had a phone in his hand? You know, you could just ask me to do something. No need for the rudeness, Aizawa-san, came the response from the device. What the heck, said someone from her class. Momo ignored the crude language and focused at the phone in the teacher's hand. Last time she was in UA, during her special exam for recommended students, she didn't hear it. Was it some kind of computer program or maybe someone called Aizawa-sensei? Sensei, what was that voice? Asked a girl with brown hair. Allow me to answer that, and Aizawa-san, please be so kind and stop blocking the camera feed from your shirt. I like to see my conversationalists. The device said again, and after the teacher rested his arm against his body, it continued, Hello students of 1A, my name is Alan. Starting today you could consider me a helping program for the whole UA educational system. I'm pleased to meet you all and hope that we get along. Momo found her jaw dropping slightly, mirroring the state of most of her fellow classmates. That thing, Alan, sounded just like a normal, skin and bones, human being, and he was so sophisticated. That was some impressive technology. Holy shit, so UA has a robot of some kind. So cool, said boy with black lightning bolt on the left side of his hair. It's not a robot, Momo said, gaining everyone's attention. It's artificial intelligence. A very developed one. Am I right, Alan? Yes, Yaoyorozu-san, you're indeed correct. My creator is the very same person that greatly improved the villain bots from the entrance exam, and it's thanks to him that Uraraka-san's Heath wasn't in any real danger from Zero Pointer. So it had access to student files. Wow, so he must be some really smart person. So cool, said pink-skinned girl with horns, bouncing on her feet. Alan chuckled at comment and surprisingly it wasn't creepy. My creator is a first-year student, just like you. Now, that was something. Momo couldn't help but feel amazement. Whoever that student was, she must be very talented. Aizawa-sensei cut short the rest of the conversation, signaling the start of the test. To show them the school motto, he gave the ball to the rude blonde and said to throw it. She had to give it to him, he was powerful. After her classmates' cheer of happiness at the possibility of showing off, their teacher told them that last place is going to be expelled. An obvious lie in Momo's mind, no way UA would allow that on first day. But he had to agree with Aizawa-sensei, when he stated the grim truth about the world. Momo felt she did quite well on the test. She used her intelligence and quirk, to create things that would allow her to score to the best of her ability. On the pure, physical part, she also did well enough. She also paid attention to her classmates, noting their quirks, scores and overall performance. That would be useful in the future, and to help her make some friends. No, she wasn't in despair for a normal contact with people her age. Not in one bit. She noticed that during the exercises Alan talked with class, giving polite comments, motivating them to do their best. She felt slightly weird when her cheeks heated up at one of his compliments. Excuse her, not every day a super advanced computer program says that her intelligence is magnificent. Aizawa-sensei showed them their scores. She was very pleased with first place. Maybe she wasn't as powerful as some of her classmates, but the sheer versatility that her quirk gave was more than enough to secure the spot. She used the scoreboard as a chance to learn the names of her classmates. She couldn't help but blink at the third place, who was Angry Blonde Pomeranian. The fuck? Who the fuck did this? Well, there was her answer. Apparently, Angry Blonde Pomeranian was that obnoxiously loud and rude boy with the explosion quirk. Momo, despite her well-mannered upbringing, found herself agreeing with the name displayed. He fumed, wild scowl on his face and popping sounds coming from his hands. Looks like his quirk matched his personality rather nicely. Or maybe it was the other way around. Why, I did it, I thought it was fitting for you, came Alan's voice. She could only imagine him with very pleased smirk. You wanna fucking die, you stupid program. Just wait till I find your unit. I'll blow you to fucking scraps. The Pomeranian screeched while popping even more explosions. He could use anger management therapy. Momo believed that she would be able to find some specialist for him. Alan just laughed of the treat. I would like to see you try, firecracker. That made Momo raise an eyebrow. Despite Alan's almost never-changing tone of voice, that sounded like something personal. Very personal. Now, I believe my time with you all is over, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. Till then I wish you all a good day. Momo was very pleased that this program was so civilized. She hoped its creator at the very least matched Alan at that department. She looked at Aizawa-sensei, who was observing Pomeranian with narrowed eyes. He then moved his look from him toward a different student and pointed finger at him. You're expelled. Every sound stopped and all eyes looked at the boy, who had shocked expression. What? But I placed 11th. He all but shouted. Unlike Mineta, who gave his all, you simply took it at a leisure pace. You really think heroism is a game, don't you? I saw you during entrance exam, there you were at least trying. Get out of my class. Maybe the principal would be gracious enough to grant you a place in general ed. Aizawa-sensei answered in a serious, if not also annoyed tone. Momo felt disappointed. She believed the teacher lied to them to motivate them in his strange way. Well, it motivated some, but she really thought that it was just a harmless threat. She looked at Mineta, who rose from his knees and cheered loudly at dodging a bullet. She hated to admit that despite all the shameless ogling he did toward the girls, he really tried his best in all of the exercises. Although her mood was slightly dampened by the whole deception thing, she found herself excited at the prospect of tomorrow. She was in the hero course and finally had a chance to show everyone and herself that she wasn't just some rich girl with influential parents. A big explosion followed by smoke came from one of the nearby buildings pulled her out of her thoughts. Chapter 5. Two minds are greater than one. Nezu looked at the monitor, his grin getting wider and wider. He really had to thank young Midoriya for suggesting it. Paying for those additional storage units was totally worth it. Nezu was sure about it. Watching his student progress in ultra-high definition while drinking a good cup of tea was his favorite thing to do now. All thanks to Alan and young Midoriya's micro cameras. He issued them to all teachers, doing also a favor to Alan, because the AI wanted to see with who he was talking to. He said it made him feel more human, which in turn made Nezu cackle. He savored yesterday's 1A quirk apprehension, very pleased with results. He should thank Alan later for all of the encouragement he gave to the students, making their job so much easier. To help students develop even more, just show them the footage to find what they struggle with and voila. It could also serve so many more purposes. For example, oh, there it was. That quick anger, that hostility, that animosity. So that was exactly what Alan mentioned to Nezu. He had to admit, when he was first presented with that information, he just threw that the kid was just really passionate about it, but now, judging from yesterday's video and many others that Alan provided, while asking for secrecy, Nezu saw the issue loud and clear. No doubt changing young Bakugo's name to that rude, but extremely hilarious, fitting nickname was just part of proving his point. He had another endeavor in the making, and he wasn't sure if it was good thing or not. Sure, Flame Hero was excellent when it came to crime fighting and investigations, but it all ended there. Of course, drive to be the very best was more than desirable, but if the cost of it was mass public property damage, was it really worth it? Alan, is this what you wanted to warn me about? Nezu asked, fondling with his paws on his frozen image of Katsuki Bakugo with his animalistic scowl and light explosions dancing across his hands present the screen. Yes, Principal. Alan swerved, a small green LED showing his presence. I see the issue. I apologize for dismissing your concern earlier. Nezu said, frowning a little. No worries, Principal. Better now than never. Nezu sat there silently for a few moments. For now, young Bakugo would be kept under close observation. If the boy won't show any signs of improvement, then adequate measures will be made. Aizawa has eyes on him from the start. Good thing that Alan also contacted him, that reminded him. Alan, why did you do it behind young Midoriya's back? Nezu was curious about his reasons for doing it this way. At first the program just stayed silent, but the green LED showing his presence on the computer remained. Although I am very grateful to Izuku for creating me, naming me and allowing me to have free will, I can see that he won't take any actions against that blonde menace himself. He still clings to that childish awe at Bakugo's power and drive, even when he doesn't see him as a friend anymore. I want to protect Izuku, and if it means doing things behind his back, so be it. Nezu nodded at that. Thank you for your honesty. Sighing, he turned in his office chair, and looked out of the window, his mind thinking about this whole situation. He would need time to fix it. Especially if young Midoriya's plan for the future came to fruition, the boy deserved it, and Nezu would be damned if he didn't help him. Time for some more tea and a heavy brainstorming session. Izuku's hands and mind were in that odd, but not undesirable, state of synchronization. It was simple really. His brain was just throwing numbers and words for his hand to write them down as fast as possible. Which was quite a bit. He remembers that one time. A paper was literally smoked from one of his creative endeavors. He was in UA, and had access to many more resources than he had before. His paycheck from his job in the comic and manga store, and his allowances could only support him that much. Seriously, to just get Alan working properly he needed to save up for almost a year, and the AI was only capable of doing simple tasks and holding basic conversations. Over the years Alan became more aware of himself, developing his own sense of being, as well as doing more and more complicated tasks, but it wasn't anywhere near nowadays level. Connecting Alan to UA's servers did so much good for him. Alan could do now so much more tasks at the same time, had access to many more information, and all for the small price of helping the school run its educational program. That was what he called a bargain. And now, having the opportunity to use UA's superior vast list of materials, Izuku had to run new calculations and change some designs. All for better, of course. Midoriya, what are you doing? Someone with a hoarse voice said. Izuku stopped, Looking up he saw ectoplasm staring at him, standing next to the whiteboard, with some complex equation on it. Wait, ectoplasm. Ectoplasm taught math. When his creative strike struck him, his class had a lesson with present Mike. Which was a period ago. Or maybe it was 2. Wait, lunch was just around the corner, and after that he had the most glorious period he could have. 3 hours in UA's support department workshop. He had to do so much today. Oh, ectoplasm was glaring at him and he slightly shivered. He was mumbling again, wasn't he? 43 2/3. Izuku said as he went back to writing. He heard ectoplasm cough, which sounded strangely like, correct. Wasn't Nezu supposed to inform his teachers that taught math and physics, that he was allowed to do what he wanted, as long as he stayed quiet? He proved to Nezu that he was far above all they had to offer him in those it was one of Nezu's logical tests or something like that. The small furred menace loved them too much. Speaking of menace, Izuku turned his head half glaring at the form of his yesterday and most likely future cause of headaches. A pink-haired girl with amber eyes, that was once again tinkering with some piece of metal, Mei Hatsume. He really must have done something bad, for God to punish him so hard. First being quirkless, not that it bothered him that much now, then this pink hurricane of destruction. What's next? Getting literally frozen by a teen with daddy issues. In all honesty, Izuku didn't know what to think of her. She seemed ultra hyper. She was all over the place, didn't know the definition of personal space, and if she couldn't find her tool, she borrowed it from someone. And above all things, she could cause anything to explode. Literally anything. Yesterday was proof of it. That thing she was building wasn't even connected to a power source and it still blasted, causing the whole studio to be filled with smoke and noise. Izuku still felt the ringing in his ears. But, as much as he wasn't fond of her, he had to admit, her talent was something to admire. Even Izuku, with his earlier possessed knowledge of machinery they were able to use, couldn't match up her sheer speed. Most of his class was only beginning to build their inventions, spending most of yesterday making blueprints and getting accustomed to the equipment. Izuku himself was nearing finishing, he just needed to screw some boards, add power, some finishing touches, and he would be done. But Hatsume, she almost completed 2 inventions. First one was some kind of grapple gun, that was in form of an arm guard. The other being boots. He remembered how Power Loader had to all but throw her out of the lab, and he looked like he had struggled with it. Izuku pondered about it and he decided that if the need arise, he'll try and do his best to befriend her. Maybe they could bounce some ideas between themselves and find a middle ground, but only if it comes down to necessity. That girl was wild and would easily be able to send him flying, no doubt with one of her explosions. The bell rung and Izuku packed his things. Now it was lunchtime and once again he could relish in Lunch Rush's awesome cooking. Of course nothing would ever beat his mom's katsudon. Nope, never. Izuku took one more glance towards Hatsume only to find her desk empty, chair laying on the floor. This was it. Finally, after the agonizingly slow passing of time, she could finally let loose her mind, and just work and for good measure work some more. So many ideas, so many designs, so many babies to make. This was heaven, she had access to so much more raw material and their variety. Now, long gone were the days, where she had to search through garbage dumps. If she wanted something, she just needed to grab it from a storeroom and make sparks fly. She was so lucky that a day had about 70 hours. She only had to suffer through those stupid, useless lessons. Hello, she's Mei Hatsume, she didn't have time to sit around and just listen. It was so counterproductive, she didn't understand that. Why won't they just give them lab hours all the time? Or at the very least to her. So many new babies to make and who could do it better than her? No one. She was furious at her teacher. Power Docker. Super Loader. No matter, the big guy with the funny helmet. The audacity to throw her out, saying it's over for the day. What an atrocious thing to say. How dare he get her away from her baby-making spree? She should just make a special baby that wouldn't allow him to do such a disrespectful thing. Yeah, that would do. That would be baby number 29. No matter, back to baby making. Just a few more twists of her screwdriver. Wait, was it hers? Yes, no. The one she picked up from the floor, when she was going back to her station with some more materials. Did it matter? Nah. And there, finally, she finished her super duper mega awesome hovering boots. Damn her teacher, she could just do it yesterday and go make another ultra cute baby. She looked at her newest child with love, only a true mother could offer, checking her design again. She found some loose screws. That wouldn't do. She was just about to correct it, when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Who dares? I believe this is mine, said a guy, with a stern voice. She looked at the person, who had the balls to stop her. He was taller than her, with freckles on his cheeks and black-greenish hair. He was glaring at her hand that held screwdriver. I've found it on the floor, she huffed at him. Really, what was with people interrupting her work? Was it some kind of competition? It pissed her off. Yeah, I've put it there to have it near my hand. Oh, that would explain it. I need it, besides mine has gone somewhere. She really hoped that this guy would just go away. You mean that one? He asked, taking out her screwdriver from the pile of metal sheets. So that was where she left it. Can I have mine, please? I need it to complete my work. May just shrugged it off, and they exchanged their tools. She felt somewhat bad for it. Just for a split of a second, she interrupted him in his baby making. No matter, now she could just test how her new baby worked and go to the next one. Are you about to do a check on it? Freckles asked. Why was he still here? She turned and found his eyes focused on her baby, interest evident in his gaze. Oh, so he wanted to witness the greatness of Mei Hatsume and her cute baby. She grinned at the potential future fan of her work. Why not give him a show? Yes, you wanna see? She asked excited. He simply nodded. She was just about to take them and put them on her feet. Did you check it functionality? What is wrong with him hindering her at every move she made? I'm just about to. She answered, her patience running thin. I meant dry test, to just see if it turns on correctly. It's powered by accumulators, right? Did you run a numbers to ensure if it was too much or too little? He told her, crossing his arms on his chest, looking at her eyes. Did she run the numbers? Yes, once. One time was enough. Yeah, in my head. Let me guess. You did it once. He sounded somewhat done. She just nodded and he facepalmed. What, was once not enough? Then he did an unthinkable. He took one boot, unscrewed the back panel and started checking her work. Now that wouldn't do. She would give him a piece of her mind. She was just about to show him her fury when he interrupted her again. It's loose, he said, pointing at one of the wires there. She took boot from him. It was not. No way that great Mei Hatsume would miss something like that. The cable was totally loose. Just her grabbing her awesome baby caused it to fall out halfway through her mess of wires. And then some more followed. Well, what was a problem? It could no doubt cause her cute baby to not work at all or lead to some kind of malfunction. You're welcome, Hatsume-san, he said with deadpan voice, blinking at her. Thanks, I guess. She laid it down on her benchtop, frowning deeply. How could she miss this? Then came a rumbling sound. Maybe a storm was coming. Hatsume-san, Freckles said, gaining her attention. Are you hungry? When was the last time you ate? He had worried expression. Wait, hungry? Was she hungry? She knew what hunger was. Now that she thought of it, that would be a very possible explanation for that weird feeling in her stomach. She had it before, she was sure of it. It always interrupted her work, so she just ignored it. Just like sleepiness. Nothing was more important than her babies. Dunno, maybe yesterday. Why do you ask? She started tinkering with the other boot. Yup, same case here. Lots of loose cables. Really, how did that slip through? She heard Green sigh loudly and ask something to their teacher. Well, she would thank him later. He just saved her adorable baby, he deserved simple thank you. Then her world turned upside down and she was looking at the floor. She saw herself moving, but that couldn't be possible. Her feet didn't touch the ground. She looked behind her and saw Freckles, or more exactly the back of his head. He was carrying her over her shoulder, taking them away from the workshop, where a cheer of happiness rung. What are you doing? She asked while struggling against his grasp. He had some nice muscles there. Wait, focus her babies. Taking you to the cafeteria. Lunch rush is still around, so he can make you something to eat, he simply stated. I don't wanna, I need to go back and make some more babies. May cried. Why didn't they understand the importance of her work? Babies, he asked confused. Oh, you man your inventions. That's cute, I guess. Even makes sense in some way. He chuckled a bit. May ceased her struggling and looked at him with bewilderment. He understood. Finally, someone understood. Now to somehow persuade him into going back to lab and continue her glorious baby making. You need to eat, Hatsume-san, he said sternly. Could he read minds? When you're hungry, your work suffers. Lie, she worked at her best every time. Occasional screwing up was just part of her work. My mom always says that a hungry inventor is bad inventor. I've found myself agreeing with that statement. With an empty stomach our minds don't have the fuel necessary to work correctly, causing mistakes. Same case with sleep, although I think it's a bit cynical of me to say that. He laughed at that. He had a nice laugh, she noted. Well, that made some sense and some treacherous part of her mind agreed with him. Her brain supplied her with memories of being more efficient having ate and slept a few hours. Okay, so maybe Green had a point, big deal. They entered the empty cafeteria. Freckles sat her at the bench and then he went to buy food. That was her chance. She could make a break and go back to her adorable baby. She rose her body or at the very least tried. It felt heavy, like it weighted actual tones. Her muscles didn't respond to her pleads, and that feeling in her stomach grew even more uncomfortable. What was going on? There you go, Green said, presenting her with full tray of food. It smelled good. Well, she wasn't one to say no to the free food. Holy crap, this was delicious. How come no one told her about it? She took the next bite and another one, almost choking while inhaling the tasty meal. Maybe she would pay a visit here from time to time. She looked up at Freckles and found him smiling so brightly that she mistook it with the sun. Thanks, I guess, she said confused between bites. Just happy to help. His smile changed to one more kinder and May found herself charmed by it. He seemed like a nice guy. They sat in silence, only interrupted by her chewing. She should be content with it, but she wasn't. This guy was different than just anybody else. Normally people looked at her weirdly and tried to avoid her. And she was fine with it. More time for her babies. But him, Freckles, he seemed like he understood her in her mind. At least it seemed that way. So May decided that she's going to do something new. Socialize. It started somewhat awkward at first, but then, she wasn't sure when her food vanished and how much time they've spent just talking, laughing and bouncing off ideas. It was so exciting, to find a kindred spirit. Green turned out to be such great company. And he had muscles, her mind added. Muscles, great brain and understood her without a hitch. Yeah, he was kinda plain looking, but it didn't matter. He would make a fine partner. In her baby making of course, her dear children could use a father. Hey, Hatsume-san, not that I'm complaining, but why do you keep calling me, Freckles, Green, or, Muscles? He asked, scratching his temple, blushing lightly. I don't know your name. That was it. Plain and simple. He looked at her stupefied. You don't know. His voice deadpanned. She just shook her head. What about our classmates? Another shake. Teachers. Third time and sold to the big-headed, curly-haired nerd. He laughed and sent her an amused smile. Did she say something funny? He extended his hand. Izuku Midoriya, pleased to meet you, Hatsume-san. She took his hand into hers. It was rough, good kind of rough. It's plain. Your name that is. He laughed. So I've been told, he said, before sighing lightly, we should go back. May nodded in agreement, and stood with him, ready to follow him out. They walked back in comfortable silence. May pondered about how to ask him, if he wanted to make babies with her from time to time. No wait, all the time. There, that sounded so much better. Should she just say it? Or maybe she should somehow lead him to propose it. Hey, Hatsume-san, he said, looking toward her with a small, kind smile. How about I finish my work, and I help you with fixing your hover boots? She loved problems that solved themselves. Yeah, I'd like that Izuku. May bounced up and down, not even trying to contain her excitement. Izuku, he shouted, his face red and mouth open. May tilted her head. Yeah, it's less plain than your surname and shorter. The less we need to call each other, the more time we have to work on babies together. Her logic was as always perfect. Izuku's face reddened some more and then laughed loud and friendly, holding his stomach. She liked that sound. Well then, I suppose that I need to call you May in exchange, don't I? He said, smirking. Knew you would get it. She said, punching him lightly in the arm and laughing some. They continued their walk, thinking about the wonderful start of a marvelous friendship. By the way May, your hands are really soft and nice to touch. Why were her cheeks hot?
Part 1 ended. Thanks for watching.